Welcome to the What Now podcast, where we document our journey through chiropractic. Our goal is to give you, the new chiropractor, our firsthand experience in running a principled, cash-based practice right out of school. Join us as we bring you real perspective, lessons learned, and the leading names in the profession as we build the practices of our dreams. Yo, everybody. What is up? Welcome back to, you already know, another episode of the What Now podcast. Spencer and Zach in the Dolo Cast booth. What's up, bro?
What it do? Did you call me girl?
Nah, I said bro, but I don't know what came out. So
happens like that sometimes.
What's up, girl?
What's up, shawty?
All right, bro. So tell us what's up.
So we are not talking about that. But as I was just about to tell Spencer, I had a quick 20 minutes between our meeting and between a meeting and then our podcast, and I was gonna put headphones in, listen to a podcast or listen to an audiobook, but I was like, you know what? Like, let me just disconnect, just walk by myself. Got a call from the wife like 10 minutes in, but before she called, I had a thought of conversations I've been having with patients, and one thing I've noticed being more, and I'm sure it's similar in your office, but being more on that pain-based side and bringing people into like a life of wellness. A recurring conversation or a question I have from people is like, well, how long do I have to do X, Y, and Z? How long do I have to avoid inflammatory foods? How long do I have to do these stretches? How long should I be walking every day? How long should I be drinking water? And it made me realize, like, as business owners, I know I can get in this trap of you start looking at like, well, how long do I have to do this thing that's reaping me really good benefits? And just kind of like a little soapbox of like, sometimes you're just going to have to do the good things that require effort for X amount of time because that's the goal you want, right? And that's kind of like what I've told patients is like, I mean, you don't have to do those forever, right? You don't have to see a chiropractor forever, but if you're noticing the benefits, if it's really changing your life, like when you first came in here, I know it's hard to remember 2 weeks ago, but you were limping. You were telling me it hurt just to get up out of a chair. You were telling me, you couldn't engage with your spouse because the hip pain was so bad. Like, there's all these different types of things. And now you're asking me 2-3 weeks into it, well, how long do I have to do these stretches or these exercises? And it made me realize, like, we do the same thing as business owners. Like, how long do I have to post on social media? How long do I have to train my staff? How long do I have to? And it's like, well, do you want to continue to bear the fruit of that effort? Because you're probably going to have to do it for that long. And it's not like a work hard type conversation, but it's more so how quickly we can abandon things that we're doing right that are getting us really great results. So I don't know if any of that made sense. But that's
where my totally makes sense. I just put out like a post in the Wealthy Practitioner Facebook group. I mean, pretty much about the same thing. And even though we're in like pediatrics, doesn't mean that people don't ask us about their pain and stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, we're in pediatrics, and so it's not a majority. Like, not everyone is sitting across from us and is like, my back hurts. Like, I mean, moms come in all the time for that.
Right.
My back hurts. My hip hurts. It hurts for me to walk. My ankles hurt. I have headaches. Those kind of things. We just do it from a different lens. Like, our market is just different. It's not that
I was just meaning like, you're not like a baby's not asking you, well, how long do I was kind of making a joke
for sure. But their parents are.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. Like, their parents are. So when are we going to start to see these benefits and all those kind of things? And one of the biggest things about chiropractic care that I tell people is, like, it's as long as you want it to be, right? And so asking when do you stop needing to get your nervous system checked is like your kids asking, hey, when do we have to stop going grocery shopping each week? Or you thinking, hey, when do I have to stop putting gas in my car or charging my Tesla, God forbid? Like, when do I need to stop charging my phone every day? Or when do I need to stop washing my clothes? When do I need to stop maintaining my house? When do I need to stop cutting my hair? It's really when you choose to, but the benefits of doing things consistently are dependent on what your goals are and how much you're going to use it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing with business. I mean, my post in the Wealthy Practitioner Facebook group was actually on this. It's like, we're so committed as chiropractors to the process of, hey, I'm going to unwind the stress out of my nervous system. I'm going to build more efficient neurological patterns, and I'm going to increase neurological capacity. I'm going to say that all the time. Hey, I bought a house, we own a home, and I'm going to cut my grass. I'm going to make sure my paint isn't chipped. I'm going to clean the yard. I'm going to, sweep the floors. I'm going to do this each week to prevent issues, ensure the wellness of my house, ensure the longevity of my investment.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm going to work out in the gym every single day. Or, I'm going to focus on one aspect of my fitness every single day because I want to take care of my body. And we see our body and our lives as this ongoing managing thing, but yet we look at our business as, I want to flip a switch and this is going to turn on, or I want to turn the switch off and this problem is going to stop. But the business is a living organism. It's an ever evolving thing with parts. And it's literally just like a body. It's like a living thing. It's a baby. Literally, it's like your first child. It grows, it develops as you do, and it matures. And we want to say, I'm going to start this marketing campaign and all my problems with marketing are going to be over. No, it's not. It's just going to change. It's the same thing of, I'm going to go to the chiropractor, I'm going to get adjusted, my back is going to stop hurting, and then I'll be done. No, it's not. That's not how it works. Yes. Are we going to relieve some of the symptoms that you're feeling of pain, discomfort, decreased range of motion? Yeah. If you start a marketing campaign, are you going to see new patients? Are you going to increase your revenue? Are you going to drive more traffic to your website? Of course. But that doesn't mean that you don't have anything to manage anymore.
Right.
Right. And so, dude, we can continue to talk about that, but it's really, you have to fall in love with the process. And we all understand the process of life and how life evolves and life has to be managed and all those things. But we don't want to manage our businesses. We don't want to delegate systems to our businesses. We don't want to continually grow our businesses or nurture our businesses. We just want outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
I want to collect 60K a month. I want to collect 100K a month. I want to collect 10K a month. But we're at 4K a month, we're at 50K a month, or we're at, 80K a month. And then we want to sit there and be like, why is it not happening overnight?
Mm-hmm.
Yet we get so upset whenever our patients are like, well, I got adjusted. I don't know if this works. But we're going to hire a new team member and we're not going to double our revenue and be like, well, I don't know if they're working out. Or you're going to change your pricing structure and you're going to get a couple no's at the beginning and you're going to be like, dude, I don't know if I'm really worth this much.
Right.
And so, it makes total sense. And I think that is like a big thing. Like we say, oh, enjoy the process. But in our businesses, we're just all set on instant gratification.
Mm-hmm. And I think and kind of to go from like a strategic route, one thing I've really just in the last couple months and realized today and yesterday, like with that process, I think one thing that's really helped me, because I've been very outcome associated, like in the business. I'm very much process driven in life. But I found myself always like month to month comparing, or like this month we have to get XYZ done. And so really embracing the rocks concept. And I know we've talked on it a little bit, but I'm really getting to see that now, because one of our rocks was to get up conditions and symptoms on our website page, to begin building organic traffic through that. And had I said, let's get this done in July, never would have got done. It's a 2-3 person job. Like there's my website developer, there's me, there's Josh, like we're all working on this together. And just this past week, we're finally getting those pages up. But we've been working on it since July. And so I've gotten to see this process build, and I can see the finish line. I can see the end result now. But had I said like, oh, let's get this done this month, it wouldn't have gotten done in July, and then we would have just scratched it, right? Rather than, hey, here's these 90 days that we can not necessarily take our time, but give ourselves some grace, work this through, make it look good, and have it fine-tuned, and fall in love with that process. Now we know how to do this again, and those types of things, rather than just like, again, being the outcome. We didn't get it done in a month, we're never going to get it done kind of thing. And so embracing those quarterly rocks has been huge for us.
Yeah, I think that when you do something and you look for the outcome right away, then it's never going to be like you're never going to be satisfied when you're attached to the outcome. But when
Mm-hmm.
you're attached to the process of, this is what Garrett Gunderson was talking about, like in our wealthy
Mm-hmm.
practitioner
Who's
call.
gold?
Like when you're attached to the process, the outcomes become like extra. Like I don't know what else to say. The Cajun word for it is lanyap. Like it's like the icing on top, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the little extra thing. But like when you're attached to the process of, am I just doing the right thing? Am I following the right steps? Am I moving in alignment with my energy, my goals, and my um like my plans? Like that's when you're like, oh, I can be successful. But because you're always the goalpost is always going to move. Your business is always going to be growing. Like since we see kids all the time, like I always have these analogies, but like when you have a baby, if the outcome is, I just want my baby to walk, then you hit that when they're one. But I mean, if you have a 12-year-old that has the walking ability of a 1-year-old, then I mean, look at that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, first I want my kid to walk, then I want them to talk, then I want them to be able to do math, and then I want them to play sports or all those things. The goalpost continually moves. We do that in life all the time, like first I'm going to be able to pay rent with my roommates. Or, first I just want to be able to move out of my parents' house. Then I
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to pay rent for my roommates. Then I want to be able to pay for my place on my own. Then I want to buy a house. Then I want to be able to have a family and support my family. Then I want to be able to have a house big enough to have a family. Then I want to be able to have a house small enough so I can travel. It always
Mm-hmm.
moves. Yet in our business, we're always a when I get there mode. I know how many times I've said like, oh, I'm going to do this, and when I get there, then I'll do X, Y, and Z. Like, man, I really want to learn how to play golf. I've been saying this actually. I really want to learn how to I really want to teach myself how to play the piano. That's like just been a thing that I think it's
Mm-hmm.
fun. Who knows? I might try it and I might hate it. But it's always, oh, well, when I have more time, when I get there, then I'll start to do this thing. And we put our lives on the back burner. We put enjoying our lives and our practices on the back burner to hustle and grind our way toward some outcome that once we get there is going to change again. And then you're unsatisfied with that.
Mm-hmm. I think too, like a big thing I'm learning as well is, and I'm trying to think of the best way, but like an attachment to the process. Like, if that makes sense. Like if I do X, if I put out a marketing campaign and it doesn't get this right away, then it sucks. I don't know if that makes sense for what I'm trying to say, but like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
being so attached to the outcome, rather than really enjoying it, and trying to find those things where like I enjoy the process of, like if it's reading the Little Money Bible, talking about like struggle and effort. Like if I'm putting in continuous effort and struggling to make my way through it, they talk about like how you probably should abandon that, right? Like if
Yeah.
if there's just not a lot of fruit coming from that, then it's probably not worth it. But if you're putting in the effort, getting some outcome out, putting in some effort, getting some outcome out, and not being overly attached and placing like huge expectations, then that's going to be big.
Yeah, I mean the one like image that like pops into my head of that is like, if you are rowing a boat, right? There's two different, like, if you're struggling to move this boat as you're rowing it, you can be doing one of two things. Either one, you're trying to paddle upstream and you have all the forces of nature and everything working against you. Or two, you just might not be paddling enough. You could be moving with the current, or you could be in a still current, but you're only just paddling once. And then you're saying like, oh man, I don't know why I'm not in the destination. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I really thought about that in the gym today. The gym has been like really something different for me now, just because now we have it in the house, and like
Mm-hmm.
uh I'm pretty proud of it. We have a pretty substantial home gym set up. I'm really like I'm really liking it. It's probably my favorite part of the house. But um
Just a
it,
side note, has it been harder or easier to work out with the home gym?
easier, dude. I'm in there
Yeah,
all the time. Like
nice.
anytime that I'm like, oh man, I'm like doom scrolling on my phone, I'm like, nah, dude, I'm just gonna go hang out in the gym. Or like I find myself like, I'm gonna just go in there and just be in there. Like I just like to be there because it's
Nice.
something that I'm proud of. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
created something that I'm proud of, and so I like to be in there. And it's the same thing with like being at home. Like Kayla and I, like we're like, man, we really need to start doing stuff, but like we also like being in the house because like
Yeah.
we're proud of this house. Like, but the gym is like the coolest part. But anyway, I was like benching today, and I was it was like a 4x5 day, and I was like, man, I'm gonna hit 225 for 5. And like, dude, before like a year ago, like that was my 1 rep max.
Yeah, I remember spotting you at the gym for 225, like as
Yeah,
your 1 rep max.
225, 1 rep max. And I was like, hey, Zach, I need you to spot me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like, yeah, I got 225 for 5, like 4 sets. I'm like, that's pretty solid. Like
Mm-hmm.
back in high school, like my 1 rep max was 135. Like that's
Yeah.
nothing. And
Sorry.
but at the same time though, it's like, okay, I hit that PR and like, okay, that's great. Like, all right, what's the next thing? Right. But it's really the fact of, dude, today I was able to get in the gym and
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to bench that. It's not about the weight, it's about the doing,
Yeah.
right? It's about the doing of the thing because over time, like, I mean, just a year ago, right? 225 was my max, and now I just hit it for 20 today. Like, that's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
so
I had that same exact moment yesterday doing pull-ups. Like when I started Garage Gym Athlete November of last year, it would be like, do 6 pull-ups today. And I was like, I can maybe get 2. And then yesterday was like a 4 to 6. So like, you know, if you can get 4 or 6. And I did 6 like relatively easy. I was like, man, I can start adding weight to like chin ups and pull-ups. And that's in like less than a year. And it wasn't like I was ever doing this program to get better at pull-ups. It was just
no.
an outcome based on trusting the process and going through it.
Yeah, I mean, think back to, well, dude, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. One of my new workout buddies, he's like the CEO of this big like staffing company. It's
Mm-hmm.
huge, it's worldwide. Does multi millions, like multi 8 figures. And
Mm-hmm.
he lives in my neighborhood and he's got a tank sled where it's got like the wheels and
Oh
stuff. And so
yeah.
we've been pushing it, but we just were like, hey, we're just gonna take it around the block. And so like we get to talking and stuff like as we're pushing the sled, and we were talking about, um, it's just the small push every single day that really creates the difference later on. And if you think back to where we were at, Zach, episode 1 when we first started, how
Yeah.
much more we know about business, how much more, and I still feel like I don't know a lot. And I'm like,
Right.
man, I still have so much more to learn,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm exponentially like 100-fold, 1,000-fold more educated and more knowledgeable and more confident around business than I was a couple years ago. And so like, if you're just starting a practice or if you've been in practice for 10 years, and you're at like, oh, I'm seeing 50 a week. I don't know why I'm not at 300. And you're saying like, okay, I'm going to quantum leap. Like if you're in Steph's thing and you're like, hey, I'm going to quantum leap and I'm going to go from 50 a week to 300 a week. The quantum leap is not actually the volume in which you're doing it. The quantum leap is the mindset and the energy
Mm-hmm.
shift of saying, I now have the capacity to receive and produce the volume that it takes to 300 a week. That's the
Mm-hmm.
quantum leap. But it's the small things of showing up every single day of being like, hey, I'm going to do this. And like when we doubled the practice, like in 45 days, it wasn't like, I mean, that was still 45 days.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, oh, hey, I'm going to double the practice. And on Monday, we were seeing 100. And on Friday, we were seeing 200.
Right.
Right. But like, let's just show up every single day and let's just see, like each week, let's just try to see 5 more visits. How do we get 5 more visits on the thing?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if each week you're doing that, I mean, in 10 weeks, you have 50 more visits. That's a massive shift in your practice.
Right.
But I think that we want to be like, okay, I'm going to do this one thing. And then when I get those extra 50 visits, I'm just going to stop doing that.
Right. And that's kind of to bring it back full circle is like, oh, now I'm good. Now I can go back to doom scrolling or whatever it might be. And so it's, I think too, like one thing we were talking about this at our team meeting yesterday, just kind of the hunger starts to go away. Right. So like I realized like last week we kind of had a dip in new patients. And I started thinking back on like my, the way I was going about the week. And so when we first started coming back from the wedding and started getting like Facebook ads and everything, like I was just as eager to follow up with leads and like get them booked. And Josh was, and like we were like really like working together. Like if I was back in my office, I was calling leads or like following up, those type of things. And then I quickly realized, because now I have this kind of realization, the ability to find these type of cycles. Last week, I'd come back in the office, I'd check Instagram, I'd maybe text someone or like kind of just like not do anything productive, because I was like, oh, well, we've had 8, 10, 15 new patients a week. Like we got this thing on autopilot. It's like, no, like I still got to continue to do my stuff and delegate and work on that. But it's so funny how quickly that hunger and that drive can leave as soon as things seem to be good.
Yeah, I mean, to touch back like on our on like your pull-ups example, right? So we're both like doing garage gym athlete, and are you on the hard to kill cycle or are you still on shred?
Still shred.
Okay. Well, anyway, um, the thing about like garage gym athlete that I really like is that like the cycles like in the training blocks are programmed with a focus.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, it's like tempo and control focus, and so we're doing like back squat, bench, and deadlift. Like squat, deadlift, and bench, whatever the big three are. But on different days of the week, and it's all focused on like tension and time under tension and tempo,
Mm-hmm.
which then builds strength, right? But it's the same stuff every single week in the same order in the same rhythm. Like I know every Monday I'm back squatting. I know every Tuesday I'm bench pressing. I know every Wednesday I have a long run, and I know on Fridays I have a deadlift, and Thursdays are like quote or like a rest day, right? Like I know that cycle every single time is gonna be like that for the next 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And in our businesses, like it's that consistent, focused effort that's going to really get the progress. If you were like, hey, I'm gonna do some pull-ups today on Monday, and then 3 weeks later, you're like, I'm gonna do some more pull-ups and everything. Like there's no strategy behind that. And so you can't really grow. You would be like, oh, I can do maybe 6 pull-ups or I'll do a couple pull-ups every single day. You're not going to see that progress of like that focused effort of like, nah, now I'm going to really add some weight. And so I think it's important like for our team members to be like, hey, I'm solely focused on this quarter. My like Logan, our office manager, was switching payment processors. Her biggest project, her main focus is
Yeah.
your main focus is switch everyone over to payment processors.
Yeah.
My main focus, I'm writing our email campaigns for our automations. Caitlin's main focus is she is organizing our moms group. Danny's main focus is I'm scheduling and creating a social media calendar. And like that's where we're starting to see like 3 weeks ago we had 3 new patients on the schedule. And we were like, hey, we're going to double down on what we're consistently doing. This week we have 11. And so it's like that, but that's where the leads are coming from. And it's because we're all focusing the effort, and it's not I'm this gear and I'm that gear and I'm not beat bopping around the different tasks. I'm focusing on one thing until it's completed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that's like one of Steph's principles, like focus on one thing until successful, until complete success or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
yep, I think that's huge.
yeah, and so I mean, I feel like we can just get so ADHD or like ADD as business owners because we have so many things that we can be working on at one time, but you have to prioritize like what are you going to work on and then figure that out. Like Zach, like what is like some of your like what's your mindset and your process around like, okay, what do I need to be doing this month?
It kind of goes back to before. It was like more month to month basis. It was like this month I'm going to build out X, Y, and Z. But now shifting to the rock, so we have 5 quarterly rocks that we're all working on together as a team. I might like take one a little bit more, or like vice versa. And so like one of those rocks was to do 2 lunch and learns this quarter. We've already done one. I'm working on creating another one before the end of September, right? And so I'm reaching out to businesses. I'm checking in with my contacts and patients, like if I know they work in an office, just simply asking if that's something they would be interested in, versus those conditions and symptoms pages that I had mentioned, like building those out via AI. We're not just typing them ourselves. Josh is more so taking that on. So he's building them out, and then I put them onto the website, right? And so it's kind of with those rocks throughout the quarter, and then we check in every weekly meeting, like where are we at with these rocks? Do we need help in any which way, and that sort of thing.
And so like when you're saying like, okay, I want to start doing 2 lunch and learns, what was the trigger for you to be like, hey, we need to start doing lunch and learn?
It was a big, one was like kind of talking with Steph and Nikki through the 90-day sprint. And I'd mentioned like, hey, typically if I give a 10-minute presentation at BNI, we get 2 to 3 new patients from that 10-minute talk. And BNI, there's like 15, 20 people in the group. And so 10% of that group was coming in as a new patient. And most of them are already coming in. So it was just like really great results for 10 minutes of work. And so they're like, do lunch and learns. And so that was a big reason why I wanted to kind of try and test it out and see if it was a good tactic for us. Our first one went great. We spoke in front of 15 employees and we scheduled 9 exams that day. I paid $200 for Chick-fil-A and got that covered in just exam fees. So we had a great return on investment. And now it's like, okay, let's continue doing this and make this a recurring thing for our business. I get a lot of fulfillment from speaking. I like the 10-minute presentation. I like the chance to get to meet people. I feel like I gel well with like corporate type people. So it was just like a pretty cohesive, mutual type creation, I guess.
Yeah. What have you been when did you get that done?
The first one?
Yeah.
The first one was like the very end of July. So
Nice.
I think I've called like 20 businesses before getting this one.
Nice.
And so I had like a list of 500 businesses all within a 7-mile radius. I kind of picked out like 30 of them that I was like, kind of recognize that name. Gave them a call. Some people are like, no. Some people, you don't even talk to anyone. So it was just like, it's a process, but
Yeah.
it was very fruitful.
You're gonna get the Schwab account.
That's the
golden goose.
Yeah, it's the golden goose for sure. Schwab, Fidelity.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you track your stats for your new patients?
What do you mean?
Do you track how many new patients come in week to week?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you noticed an uptick or like any change in your trend? In
for
your
sure.
average new patient. This is what I'm trying to get at is like.
Oh yeah. So like, so June, just being super vulnerable, share some authentic stats. We saw 6 new patients in June. Things were trending downward very quickly. I think our average up in May, we saw 5. I was closed for 2 weeks, so I didn't, and my head was not in it, but still 5 was really very small. I think we saw more than 5 new patients in our first month being open. But anyways, so 5 and then 6. I was like, I got to do something about this. And so we got the Facebook ads going. We kind of went back to what we knew was working, but then I was like, let's add in some things that like we kind of already have that on autopilot. Let's do some other things, not just rely on social media. So the lunch and learn, and we went from 5 or 6 new patients in June to 26 in July. We're up over 25 for August, and so a rather quick change.
Yeah, all you have to do is you're looking at your stats and you're like, oh yeah, like this is our low point, this is our weak point, so we're going to focus on this, and then you 5x your like literally 5x your new patient acquisition. So that's awesome. And so that's kind of the same thing for us. This is what I was trying to really hint at is like the decision making stuff of knowing if you are making progress or not, and it's you're not focused on the outcomes, but when you're focused on the process of influencing that statistic, or when you can use your objective measures and your stats of your practice to understand, okay, this is the process I need to start working on, and you really develop that process and you say, okay, let me go and refine my systems, refine my processes, refine my mindset around these things, then that's when you're going to get these exponential outcomes. Because like you said, like that was in May and June, but you didn't really see that consistent return trend until, July and August. So you'd been working on this for 2 months and you're like, oh man, I don't know. But then when you look back, you're like, oh, I have a 5x. We just 5x our new patients, right?
Yep.
And so, it's kind of the same thing for us is, I was like, man, like, I really want to work on our PVA. Like I'm trying to really work on our retention. So it's like, okay, we're going to implement a couple new retention strategies. And so we're looking at our PVA, and our PVA is climbing like, it was at, around like 29 or so. And I was like, I really want our PVA to be like eventually around like 100, but I haven't been open long enough for it to be 100, like average 100. So I was like, I really would like it to be somewhere close to like 50 or 60. And it was around like the 28, 29 mark. And I was like, well, we need to start doing that. So we're working on our retention stuff. And this has probably been over the last like 6 months. And I'm looking at our PVA trends, and our PVA is like 48. Right.
Heck yeah.
And, but that's because I'm tracking it and I'm saying like, okay, what is our lowest stat? And that's that's just showing us like, hey, I need to work most on this, right? Like for the longest time, my OVA was really low, but my PVA was also low, but my total collections was super low.
Yeah.
And so I was like, my total visits were high, but my collections were low. And so I'm like, okay, well, I need to work on my pricing at this point, right? Like I'm not, my new patients are fine. like I think like really for the history of our practice, like we average 20 to 30 new patients a month. So we don't have a new patient problem.
Mm-hmm.
We have a revenue problem, and we weren't having a conversion problem either. Like we were having, our care acceptance rate was like 90%, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But we were having a really weird collections issue. And I'm like, oh, well, that's how I know we have an incongruency in our pricing model, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still seeing all these new patients, but my collections aren't going super high and my conversions are still super high. So why am I not collecting more? And it's like, well, I have a pricing issue now, right?
Yeah.
And making those informed decisions based off of data is the thing that lets us know. And then when you track the data over time, that's how you can be like, okay, my process is working and I'm moving toward my outcomes. Versus if you're just like if you were, say it's week 1 of June and you're like, well,
Mm-hmm.
we have 5 new patients. And then you're like, well, I want to 5X my new patients. Um, and then it's week 2 of June and you don't see 25 new patients that week. You're like, well, I suck. And then it leads you into this big spiral of like, well, nothing is working and we have to dump everything. We have to blow everything up. But that's where like objective data comes back, where you can actually zoom out and be like, all right, is what I'm doing working?
Mm-hmm.
Right. The same thing with our bench press or the pull-ups, dude. I mean, like you do 4 pull-ups one week and you're like, man, I'm never going to be able to do more pull-ups because it's Tuesday of the next week. And you're like, I can still do 4 pull-ups,
Nice.
but then 10 Tuesdays away, you're like, oh, I can do 10 pull-ups now. And you're like,
Nice.
wow, that's crazy. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important to have objectives, and it's the same thing in your practice, is when you can have objective measures like the insight or like whatever you have, because you don't just have to do insight, but that's the one that we choose to do. There are a bunch of other ones that, I've
Mm-hmm.
kind of talked to some of our friends about doing if they don't have the insight scans, but having some sort of objectivity to say like, this is where you're at now. Let's look. And even though it might not feel like you're making a lot of progress, we're going to check in with you again. And we're going to be able to look like, hey, look at all this progress that you made
Mm-hmm.
in 4 weeks. It's only been 4 weeks.
And I think that's something too, just like people value that, right? Like people like to see progress. And even too, like with our staff, like yesterday at our team meeting, when I first started keeping tracks this time last year, our OVA was like $30. And like it's up over 52, 53, which is still not where we want it to be, but like we've started making the right changes to have that OVA trend in the right direction over just a year, right? So if we can continue on that trajectory, but again, it's important to track that progress, and our staff, our team was excited about that, right? So
Where do you want your OVA to be?
65 ideally.
Yeah, I'm looking at like, around 60, 65 or so. Okay, so then what are you doing to influence that OVA?
I mean, a big one, and we've kind of joked about this, but this time last year, say you started care, your wife Caitlin would get 50% off your care plan. So
Yeah,
that would tank the OVA from there. Some other things are just, I mean, we raised prices within the last year. We went from like, I think if you paid in full, it was like $50 a visit. And if you were monthly, it was like 55. And we're now 55 for pay in full and then 65 for monthly. Our pay per visit is 75. So it's just like all these things that we're raising prices, not negotiating with people, being like, these are our prices, being okay if they say no, those type of things.
yeah. I mean, I think that's a big one, right? If like our goal is to say like, hey, like we want to average cost this service, but then every time somebody's like, oh, I can't afford that, and you say, well, how about half off?
Yeah.
You're shooting yourself in the foot. You're working harder for less. You're then watering down your care.
Right.
I mean, that's a big one. I mean, yeah, the same thing for us. Like, okay, here's a question too. Like, we're seeing like a really slow rise of our OVA. Like, we were at like $39, I think, last year, and now we're like just breaking. I think we're at. Let me not lie to you. Just tell you what the stats.
I think it's important too while you're kind of looking that up, at least from like the way I view it. I don't think you should be viewing OVA and PVA on like a weekly stat. I think that's definitely a rolling stat over like a quarter. 6 weeks is typically what I like to look at. But if you're someone that's keeping stats and you're like, oh, this week's my OVA was this much, like that's such a volatile stat to keep track of that way.
Yeah, we're looking at like, I look at them more like quarter to quarter and like month to month. Because like in those month to month, I think like you get really messed up if you're looking like week to week or so. So like I'm looking right here, like PVA in January is 38. PVA in February is 24, right? The reason that is because your total visits divided by your new patients is your PVA. In January, we had 20 new patients. In February, we had 33. So, I mean, that's a ton, right? Same thing. OVA in January is 40. February, it's 63. And that's because we had most of our new patients that started, they all paid in full.
Right.
And I mean, that's a trend, right? And so on the year right now, our PVA is 35. But the last quarter, our PVA average is 43, where quarter two, it's 35. So when I say like, oh yeah, our PVA is rising now, like up to 43, like that's what I'm talking about. I kind of look at them like quarter to quarter and just kind of see like where we're sitting at there. But, you know, so I mean, that means I need to work on my retention. And one of the reasons like I know that our OVA is like not climbing super high yet is because we just raised our wellness prices. And before, my wellness prices were like super low, like around like $30 a visit for wellness. And I just we grandfathered everybody into that plan. And so then as our new patients that are on care plans right now, they go get onto their wellness plan at the $50 mark, then that should start to bring that OVA up.
Yep.
And that's like a long play, right? Like, so
that's a plan for us as well. And maybe this is like a limiting belief, but since we were basically closed for like a full month just a little bit ago, I don't feel as confident boosting wellness prices quite yet. I also haven't decided like if we'll grandfather people in or whatnot. But it's definitely the next step because our wellness plan is like $37.50 a visit if you're coming in every week. And I'm like, that's cheaper than a haircut.
So, yeah, I mean, dude, I had to come to terms with the fact of not everybody is going to use chiropractic like we will, and that's totally okay. Because we have had exposure to chiropractic in this profession and this lifestyle for, 10 plus years at least, you know? I mean, okay, if you're in business where we're at like 2 years in and your first adjustment ever was the day you started chiropractic school, that was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So you've been under chiropractic care for 6 years and you're meeting people where they're at and it's their first time ever getting adjusted. And then you're like, yeah, you should come in every week for the rest of your life. And you're not doing any education around it.
Yeah.
That's why I think like the drip sequences and stuff are so important, is because it gives you that you can basically catch them up to your 6-year experience at minimum, to where they're at now, like through these emails and stuff, and educating people. So it's a process, you know, and like, you know, I mean, we graduate people to wellness like somewhere around like 3-ish months on average, like for care. And like, dude, it's okay if you don't come in weekly. And but we want to make sure that our pricing is congruent to where we don't like pass judgment or be like, oh man, that sucks that they signed up for biweekly. The great thing is that they are choosing to continue chiropractic care because we know it's a valuable tool in their life, no matter how often they get adjusted. And we want it to always be a win-win in that situation. We don't want to feel like, oh man, like our biweekly people kind of suck. We don't ever want to feel like that. So it's always a win whenever people decide to move forward with wellness care.
And if anything, if you price structure it right, at least for us, like from a stats standpoint, not that we like prefer biweekly, but like biweekly is $100 a month, which is $50 per visit, and our weekly is $150, so it's $37.50. So biweekly pumps the OVA up and keeps your schedule open for patients that are on active care plans. So it's not like the biggest thing.
It's a win-win, right? But that's your mindset around it. I think like a lot of like the like oorah chiropractic scene will be like, well, if you're not seeing people weekly for the rest of their life at $20, then like you suck, because like who cares how much you collect? Just see more people and you'll just collect more. Right. And that's been a big thing that I've like broken away from with Steph, is because like, yeah, dude, like, do I want to see everyone in the world? Of course. Can I physically see everyone in the world? Absolutely not.
No.
And so instead of me being all burnout and strung out and stressed, I would rather deliver like the best adjustment of my life every single time to every single person. And I think you had said this a couple weeks ago on the show, but like you only have a finite amount of adjustments to give.
Yeah, Nikki said that.
Yeah, and so, like, who are you gonna give those to? People who aren't gonna appreciate them and are
Hmm.
just gonna be like, "Oh, well, like, it's $20 for a pop and a crack," and, like,
I
might as
think it's
well dip.
also, not to go down this rabbit hole too much, because we definitely have gone on different paths on this episode, which is great. Um, but one thing I've noticed too, just from like a price standpoint, um, there's not a lot of value in being in the middle. And what I mean by that is, like,
No.
if the joint's next door, you're probably not going to be able to be as cheap as the joint. But being in that middle spot is just as bad, if not worse, right? So you're not as high value or perceived value as the most expensive, but you're at that same kind of value point as that cheapest person, right? And I noticed this um, with the gym I used to be at, right? So the gym that you and I used to be at um, was kind of in the middle spot, right? I think it was like $40 to $50 a month. Um, it wasn't like much different than like a Planet Fitness, if you will, but it wasn't Lifetime like where I'm currently at, and it's not your home gym. Um, but it was good. It got the job done. Well, they just recently shut down, um, and you see this all the time, especially in the gym sector. Of like, you try to play that middle game, but you can't be lower than Planet Fitness, but you can't offer the value that a place like Lifetime does. And so it's just not bringing that right type of clientele. People are leaving easily. The equipment, the sauna was closed all the time because it was like not working. There were leaks in the roof and all these types of things. So it's a really interesting price point.
Yeah, well, being in the middle, you place yourself in that commodity sector
Mm-hmm.
of being like, well, it's kind of the same as,
Mm-hmm.
well, because usually, like, if you're in that middle ground, you don't have enough profit margin revenue to generate where you can have that stellar patient experience. And I think this does tie in with our whole, like, you got to be in love with the process kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to understand all of your processes and you have to really be involved in building the processes of the practice. Because if you only worry about the outcomes, you become like this, like, if you're only revolved around outcomes of like revenue and patient visits and all that stuff, you can just like spend a massive amount on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook ads and do like a $20 exam and just
Mm-hmm.
pump a massive amount of people through your practice. And you can just have like, you can buy like a nervous system poster or a chiropractic poster and like tack it to your wall. And you have folding chairs in your waiting room and you just have a table thrown in the middle of the room. Like you just throw your Chirolux in the middle of the room. And like, that's great. And you can just pump numbers, like tons of people there. And that's really outcome driven. Yeah, of course, you're seeing a lot of people. You're going to collect a lot of revenue,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to be working a lot. And a lot of people will meet you. That's great.
Yep.
But if you're not like really in love with the process of like, let me pick apart every single piece of my patient experience, my phone call interaction, my EHR software, how easy is it for my employees to work these systems, and really being in love with the building of the process, that's what's going to drive your outcomes. And when you do that, it's going to also help build your self-worth. So you'd be like, oh, no, of course, like we have the best experience for
Mm-hmm.
chiropractic care in this area. And so of course we're going to be the most expensive, and that's
Yeah.
okay if people don't want to pay that.
Mm-hmm.
But because then the people who are going to pay it, they're going to have people just like them that are going to value your care, and you're going to avoid all the people who don't value you.
Right.
And so when you're in that middle ground, you like place yourself in this commodity of like, I don't really know if it's worth it, because why would I not just go to top tier and pay the more
Mm-hmm.
premium? Like it's really only like $20 extra a visit. So I'm just going to go with this premium place that everybody is saying,
Mm-hmm.
or like, I'm just going to go to the joint because it's kind of the same thing and it's cheaper. When I was shopping for trucks, like I was really looking at the same thing. Like I was looking at the GMC Canyon, and like there's the Elevation, that's the baseline one. There's the AT4, which is the middle one. And then there's the Denali. And I was like looking at it and I was like, well, like the AT4 is like the middle ground one. It has a bunch of stuff, but like for like $3,000 more or like five
Mm-hmm.
grand more, I'll just get the top of the line one.
Right.
Why? Like I'm already spending the money. Why would I not get the best?
Mm-hmm.
And there are different types of buyers, and you have to figure out which ones
Exactly.
your practice is going to cater to. You can cater to the people who are like, well, it's $5,000 more, and the middle ground is really like 10K more, so I might as well save the 10K to kind of get the thing that I'm looking for, and that's fine.
Yep.
But we're the high ticket one, and that's what we want to be.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
And I think you'll know who you are just by when you get the new iPhone, if you opt for for like that second upgrade of storage, which kind of buyer you are. I've always been the one being like, no, I'm gonna get the next level of storage, like,
Yep.
because I want that.
Mm-hmm. I think
So
that's good. And it's a good endpoint. What type
yeah.
of iPhone buyer are you?
Yeah. So guys, let us know what kind of iPhone buyer are you. Do you opt for the extra storage?
No
I mean, I
judgment
guess
either way.
128 is like a lot, so you don't really need extra. But maybe you do. Let us know what kind of buyer you are. Thanks for those of you who reached out asking us about the chart from last episode. We had a lot
Yep.
of people reach out, and so that was really cool. If you want our stat sheet, let me know. I can send you out our stat sheet that I made on Excel to track your stats, OVA, PVA, all that stuff. It does monthly, weekly, quarterly, yearly runnings automatically for you. So let me know about the stat sheet if you're interested in that.
Yeah. Let them
All
know.
right, guys. Thanks so
Peace.
much for listening to the What Now podcast. Peace. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the What Now podcast. If you took something valuable away, feel free to share it with a friend, post it on your socials, or give us a 5-star review. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.